In this video, I will teach you not only how to use Google Drive, but also Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms, and Google Slides in one action-packed video that you will never forget. Let's get started. If you need to learn how to use Google Drive and all of its most basic, most important components, this is the video for you. Or if you have a colleague, a coworker, a fellow teacher that needs to get up and running using these tools, again, this is the video for you to share with them. And the first topic we're going to dive into in this video is Google Drive. Once you have a Google account, all you have to do to get to Google Drive is go to drive.google.com, and you should be taken to a screen that looks something like this. Another way to get to Google Drive whenever you're in the Google ecosystem is to click here on the Google Apps symbol. If you click there, it gives you a list of the many Google tools and apps that are available to you. And in this list, you'll find Google Drive. And so that's another way to get to this screen. The very first time you go to your Google Drive homepage, it will most likely look a little different than what you see here. You may not have a suggested list, and you may not have any documents down here to look through. But other than those differences, it should look pretty similar to this. First, let's look at how to create files in Google Drive. To create a new file, simply go here to the upper left and click on the New button, and you get a list of things that you can create. The most common types of files that you'll create in Google Drive are listed here: documents, sheets, slides, and forms. But notice that there are more options below. So to create a new file, all you have to do is decide what kind of file you want to create, let's say a Google document, and then you can just click to create a blank Google document, or if you put your mouse here on the arrow, you can choose between two options, a blank document or a document based on a template. In the next chapter of this video, I will show you in detail how to create a blank document and how to use Google Docs. So for now, I'm just going to select this option from a template. When you click that, it opens up Google Docs. So I was working in Google Drive, but upon selecting New Google Doc, it opens up a different Google product called Google Docs. And here I have a template gallery. These are templates that I've used in the recent past, so it's recommending those to me, but I can also browse down the page to look at other templates that are available. Resumes, different styles and types of letters, personal documents, work-related documents, and many others. I'm going to go back up to the top, and I want to select this option here in the work category of a brochure. So I just click on it, and it opens up in Google Docs. At this point, I could click wherever I want to make edits, and I can delete or overwrite any of the information in the template and replace it with my own information. Now that I've created this file, it's a good idea to make sure that I've named it properly. By default, templates will be named after the template that they came from, but new blank documents often will say untitled here in the upper left, and so it's a good idea to click there and replace what's there with your own title. So I've typed in a title that I want to use, I'll tap enter, and this file is now not only created, but it's named properly. Now at this point, I'm going to X out of this Google document. And one thing that's important to know is that Google Drive and each of the Google Drive products automatically saves your work. So there's no need to click save or to worry about that. Your work is constantly being saved. So I will go ahead and X out of this tab. And here I am back in my Google Drive account. Let's see what happens now. If I click up here in the address bar and tap enter, you'll see that now a new document is suggested for me to continue working on because I recently started working on it. So Google Drive assumes that I may want to continue to work on that. So now, going forward, whenever I want to access this document or use it or keep working on it, I can just return to Google Drive to do so. Let's take a quick look at how to do that, how to access documents that you've been working on or that you've created or even that have been shared with you from someone else. So I'm going to close out of this Google Drive tab, and let's say a week from now I want to continue working on that document. I can just go to drive.google.com, or once again, I could go to any Google product online, click this button, and go to Google Drive. It takes me here, and there is my document in my list of suggested documents. I can just double click on it to open it up and resume working on this document. Let's look at a couple of other ways to access documents and files that you've created or that you have stored in Google Drive. If you don't see the document you're looking for here, you might also check the Recent tab. So if you click here on Recent, you'll see a list of your most recently accessed and used documents. And here it is, so I can just double click on it, it opens up, and I can continue working on it. Some other tips that you may need include that it is possible to star certain files. Let's say there's a file that you want to work on and you'll be working on it for quite a while. You want to be able to easily and quickly find it in the future. You can just click here on the star. And now in Google Drive, if I click on Starred, it gives me a list of all the files that I have starred. So it's that much easier to find the document, open it up, and begin using it. To get back to my other view, I can just go up here and click on My Drive. Another aspect of accessing your files that you really need to know about is that you can change the view of your drive if you want to. So here in the upper right, there's a button that I can click to switch to grid view. And when I click that, you'll notice what happened. I now have a nice view of folders that I've created. We will look at how to do that in a few minutes. And then underneath that, I have a grid view of most of my files that are in my Google Drive. If you want to switch back to list view, you can just click the same button, and now I have a list view. And finally, this Search in Drive search bar at the top of the screen. If you use Google Drive a lot, you're going to end up with hundreds, probably thousands of documents in your Google Drive, and so this search is invaluable. It's going to help you find your files much quicker. Here I can type the name of a document or the subject, and then I can click on the document that I'm looking for, and it opens up. We also have a tab here at the left called Shared with Me, and this is a list of documents that other people have sent me, and if I browse down the page, there's even more. So at this point, we've looked at how to create new files. We've also looked at some skills for accessing files, and also a little bit on how to organize files or change the view of the files that we have in our drive. Next, we're going to look at how to deal with Microsoft Office files and also other files that are not natively part of Google Drive. Then we'll look at how to share files and how to organize the files that we create or upload. So in many cases, when someone begins using Google Drive, they already have many documents often created in Microsoft Office or another program. The good news is that those same documents can also be used in Google Drive. Let's look at how. I'm going to click here in the upper left on New, but this time instead of creating a document, I'm just going to upload a file. So I click there, and I can navigate to my Documents folder, my Pictures folder, my desktop, or wherever I need to on my computer to find the documents that I want to upload. I have a document here on the desktop in a folder here, so I'll just double click on it. And here is a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to click on it and click Open, and it's starting to upload into my Google Drive. Looks like it finished. So if I browse down the page here, notice that there is my document right there. It's a presentation in this case. And notice the file type. This is a .pptx file because it was created in PowerPoint. If I had uploaded a Word document, it would be a docx file, a Microsoft Word file. Now notice, because this file was created in PowerPoint, it has a different icon next to it. Compare that with the Google Slides icon for presentations that were created inside of Google Drive. But the good news is, even though it was created with a different program, I can double click on that presentation and notice it says it's opening it up in Google Slides. It's basically converting it into Google Slides format. Notice what it says here. Now you can use Docs, Sheets, and Slides to edit and share your Office formatted files. So now that I'm into the presentation, you can see here in the upper left, it does say .pptx, Microsoft PowerPoint format, but I can still edit it in Google Drive and in this case, Google Slides. After making a change, it's saved automatically, and I could X out to go back to my Google Drive. Before I do that, I just want to point out that there is an option here in File to download this back into PowerPoint format on my computer. So that is an option. In this case though, I'll just X out of it and I'm back on my Google Drive homepage. Next, let's look at how to share from Google Drive. So let's say this document that I've uploaded, Los Animales, is one that I'd like to share with other people. There are a couple of different ways we could do this. One is to right-click on the document and choose Share, and that opens up the sharing settings. But another way is to select the document and then here in the upper right, click on this symbol here to share the file. I'll go ahead and click that. It opens up the sharing settings. If I want to share a Google Drive file with specific people, all I do is click here and type in the email address of the person I want to share it with. And notice that I can add more than one person if I want to. If you are a Google Contacts user, you can even click and type in the name of a Google Contacts group that you've created, and everyone in that group will be invited to this document. Notice that there's an option to notify the people that you're sharing the document with, and I can click here where it says message to type a message for them. Before clicking send, it's important to be aware of these options here. If you click on editor, you can see that it's possible to invite people to simply be viewers of the document. They can just look at the document. Or you could choose to invite people to be commenters on the document. They can't change the document, but they can add some comments and feedback. The most powerful option is editor. If you invite people to be co-editors with you on this document, they'll be able to change the file, the presentation in this case, and make other edits. In my case, I'll leave it just as viewers, and I really don't want to notify them. Before I click share, notice that it's also possible to copy a link to your document. I'll go ahead and click share. And notice that neither one of these people is a Google Drive user at this point, and for that reason, it's mandatory that I click to notify the people and invite them to opt in to these Google Drive features, and then I could send it. Now notice that it's possible to share files that were created directly in Google Drive, like this one. I can click to share it, and also to share non-Google files like this PowerPoint presentation. There's another way to share files that are in your Google Drive account. If you click on a file and click share, in addition to sharing with specific people or with Google Contacts groups, you can also go down here where it says general access, and you can switch it from restricted to anyone with the link. If you do this, you can copy this link and send the link to anyone. As long as they have that link, they will be able to, in this case, view the document. If you want them to be able to edit the document or comment on the document, again, you do have that option. You can click to switch to editor. Anyone who has the link now will be able to edit this document. I just need to copy the link. I could email it to someone, post it on my web page or my LMS, whatever it might be. But basically, I just need to make that link available to the people that I want to have the ability to edit the document, and they'll be able to do so. Let's jump back in, and I'll switch back to viewer only and click done. Next, let's look at how to organize your files a little bit better in Google Drive. Again, if you use this a lot, you're going to end up with hundreds or thousands of documents. So it's important at some point to start organizing them, and it really is best to simply start at the beginning with a good organization. You'll notice that I have some folders here in my Google Drive, and I've set these up and named them the way I want them to be. Let's look at how I set up these folders. To create a folder, simply go here to New and click Folder. When you click Folder, you next need to name it. So I'll call this Spanish Class Files. I'll click Create, and I now have a new folder called Spanish Class Files. At this point, I can click and drag to move documents into that folder. You can see that it worked. And that was easy for me to do because the file that I wanted to put into the folder was close by. But let's find one that's far away. Down here at the bottom of the list, I have Los Animales. I'm going to right click on it, and I'll choose Move To, and here's a list of my folders, and there is Spanish Class Files. So I click on it and click Move. Now that file has been moved into the correct folder, Spanish Class Files. It is possible to move more than one document at a time into a folder. So I could click here on Los Colores, and then I could hold the Shift key and then click at the bottom of a list, and everything from the top to the bottom of that list is highlighted, and then I could either click and drag to drop it into the folder, or I could right click and choose Move To and select the correct folder. In this case, I'm going to X out of it because not all of those are Spanish files. So what about files that are not next to each other? I can click here on Los Colores, and then I could hold the Control key and click on another Spanish file. Now I have both of those selected, and I can click and drag to drop them into the folder, or right-click, Move To, and select Spanish Class Files, Move. And you'll see that both have now been moved into the correct folder. Now back on my Google Drive homepage, from now on, anytime I create a document or upload a document that belongs in this Spanish Class Files folder, I'm not going to simply go here and click New, File Upload, Instead, I'm going to first open up the folder that those documents should go into. So I'll open up Spanish class files. Now that I'm here, if I create a new document or sheet or slideshow, let's say slideshow, and I start working on that, and then I close out of it, notice that it's added in the correct folder because that's where I created the file. Same with uploading. If I click New, File Upload, and upload this vocabulary list, it's going to put it in the folder that I'm currently inside of. So that's a great way to keep your files and folders organized well in Google Drive. Set up some folders, and then anytime you want to create a new document or upload a new document, navigate to that folder before uploading or creating your document. Now, it is possible to create a folder within a folder. So here inside my Spanish class files, I could click New and create a new folder. There's also a shortcut to doing that. Instead of having to click on the New button, you can just right-click within a folder and choose New Folder. So I could call this Presentations, Create. Now I have a presentations folder within my Spanish class files folder, and I can put my presentations inside of that subfolder. Here's another one that I could put in there. Another quick tip is, in addition to right-clicking to create folders, you can also right-click to create new documents. So this New button here in the upper left is great, but you don't always have to use it. You can just right-click. One other tip, in addition to uploading files that already exist on your computer, notice that you can upload a whole folder of files. So many of you may have folders full of documents that you've used over the years. Why not select an entire folder full of those documents and then click Upload? Everything in that folder would now be added to this folder in my Google Drive. Okay, there's one more aspect of creating folders and files and sharing folders and files in Google Drive that you really need to know about before we move on. And that is, you could set up a folder full of shared resources. So for example, I'm going to go back here to my Google Drive. Let's say that I want to share all of my Spanish class files with other teachers at my school. I could share not just individual documents, but entire folders with other people. So here I can select the folder and click here on Share, or I could just right-click on the folder and choose Share. And now I'm granting access to either specific people by adding their names here, or I could go down here and change it from restricted to anyone with the link, and then I could share the contents of this folder not just with specific people, but anyone that has the link. They would become viewers of this folder. Anything I put in that folder, the people that have this link will be able to see. If I want them to be able to edit the items, I would switch it to Editor. And this is a great way to become collaborators with other people at your school or in your business, the organization that you work for, etc. You can all edit the same documents and the same folders if you want. And you could even set it up so that everyone that you've invited to become editors on this folder would be able to add documents to it, and you could collect all of these important resources in one central location. Notice now my folder looks a little different. Instead of just having an icon of a folder, it has an icon of a folder with what looks like a person in front of it, because this is a shared folder. So in this segment of the video, we've learned all about Google Drive and how to use it to create new documents, to access those documents, to organize them, to convert documents that are not native to Google Drive, but how to share all of those different files and documents with other people. Next, we're going to shift gears and take a look at Google Docs, which is one of the most important Google apps that you have access to from within Google Drive. This next segment is going to focus on Google Documents, or Google Docs for short. We'll look in depth at how to use Google Docs to create wonderful documents. So here I am in Google Drive, and I can just click New Google Docs. Just clicking on that will open up Google Docs. Another way to get there, though, from any Google product, you can just click this Google Apps button and look for the Google Docs symbol. Here it is. You can click on it, and that's another way to get into Google Docs. If you do it that way, you get options for creating a document based on a template or opening a blank document. In this case, a blank document is exactly what I wanted, so I'll just use this one here. Now, to actually compose my document, all I need to do is start typing. Notice I have a flashing cursor here, so I could start typing my document. Now, when you're done typing, obviously you can just tap Enter or Return on the keyboard to move down and continue typing below. Now, if you're used to Microsoft Word, Google Docs is going to feel pretty familiar to you. Similar to Microsoft Word, you can click and drag to select different parts of your document and change the type of text that they are. So for example, if I would like this to be my title, I can go up here to normal text and switch from normal text to title text. If I don't like how that looks, I can go back up and change it to maybe heading 1 or heading 2, whatever you think looks good. So now I have two different types of text in my document, and I could just continue typing. Now, in the previous segment, I showed how to share documents from within Google Drive. But what about from within Google Docs? Yes, they are related applications and they're connected to each other, but they are also individual applications. So if I wanted to share from within Google Docs, how would I do that? Well, I could try this big share button in the upper right corner. I could click on that. Now, before I share, I have to make sure I've named the document. And look, here in the upper left corner, it says Untitled Document. So I need to fix that. And Google's helping me out here because I tried to share it. It's forcing me to put in a title. And notice that by default, it put in the title that I had typed on the document itself. And that's perfect in this case. So normally I would just click Save. But I'm going to X out of this just to show you that as you're working, if you want to, you can just go up here to the title bar and just click, and it will default to whatever the title is that you've typed, or even the first line that you've typed on the document. If you're not happy with that, though, you can select it and put in some other title. Okay. Going back to share, I'm going to click share, and here I can put in specific people's names. I can add them as editors on this document, or only viewers or commenters. I could send them a message if I want to. Or the other option that I also showed in Google Drive is I can generate a link that anyone that has that link could use to either view the document or edit the document. So that should seem pretty familiar to you. Now, once you've shared a Google Doc, if you've shared it with editing privileges, the person that you've shared it with can almost immediately click the link to get into your document, and they can start editing along with you, either simultaneously or separately. Now, if you're both in a document at the same time, you'll see some icons here in the upper right corner. Some of the icons are animals, some of them might be people's faces, but each of those icons that would appear here represents a different person other than you that's accessing the document at this time and is perhaps maybe also doing edits. You'll also see some different indications that people are actually making changes or clicking. So let's say someone else is working on this document and they click here. You'll see a little line there with a color code, and it color coordinates with the icon up here that tells me who's doing the editing. So just watch out for that. It is possible to have two people actually make the same change at the same time and maybe do it in a different way. So just be careful. If you're simultaneously working on a document, it sometimes makes sense to divide it up and say, why don't you work on the first paragraph, I'll work on the second, that kind of thing. But this really is one of the best features of Google Docs, is this ability to share editing privileges with other people so that you can collaborate with coworkers or friends or family. Now, when you're collaborating with other people, there are a couple of tools that you could use to make it go more smoothly. One of them is here. If you look right here, there's a button here that has a plus sign at the center of it. That is Add Comment. So let's say I want to make a comment here. I can just go up there, click the button. Now the word June is highlighted, and I can make a comment here at the right. Okay, there's my comment. I can click the word comment to put it in there. And now my collaborators, when they are in the document, they'll see this question. And if they look into it and resolve it, they can just check this box to mark it as resolved, and this comment will be hidden. They could also click on this and reply. So these comments can become a discussion, really, between two or more people. You can also just put these comments in for yourself to remember or think about different things. Another option that we have while collaborating is we can click here where there's a pencil and an arrow. If you click on the arrow, you can go to suggesting mode. Edits become suggestions. So if I'm in suggesting mode, now when I make a change, maybe I get rid of the word certain, it doesn't actually get rid of it, it just suggests it. So here's my suggestion, delete certain. If I want to get out of suggesting mode, I can just click here again and go back to editing mode. Now there's something really useful and cool that you can do with your comments, and that is you can click here on these three dots to link to this comment. So I could copy that link And now if I send that link to someone, it takes them directly to the document and draws attention to the linked comment. Also, notice that both the comments and the suggested edits become automatically linked to the parts of the document that they correspond to. So if someone clicks here on my suggested deletion, it highlights that part of the document. What about my comments? I click on the comments and June is highlighted. One other wonderful feature in Google Docs is version history. If you click here on File, you can go down to Version History and see version history, and you can see there's also a keyboard shortcut for it. But when you go there, it will show every major change that has been made in a document. And let's say I want to revert back to the way it was at this point in time. I can click, and it gives me a preview of what the document looked like then. If I decide that's what I want, I can click Restore this version, and it would move back to that version. In this case, I don't want to do that, so I'll click Back to get back. Another type of history that you can look at in Google Docs is this. This is the comment history. If you click on that, it brings up all of the different comments, even those that have been marked as resolved. They're still stored here in comments history. Next, I want to point out a couple of other fantastic tools that are part of Google Docs. You'll find them here in the Tools menu. When you click on Tools, you can see there's spelling and grammar tools, there's a word count tool, we have a dictionary tool, some translating options, which is great, voice typing. All of these are worth looking into, but for this particular video, I want to focus just on these two. There's citations. Here you can use some tools to cite your sources. You can establish what kind of citation you're going to do. There are the three major types of citations. I'll go with MLA, Add Citation Source. What kind of a source is this? I could say it's a book, select an option. How did I access it? A database, website, or in print. And then I can put in the ISBN. So I'll just put in the ISBN, click Search. There's the book, and I'll click Continue. There's some other settings that I could go through and then just click Add Citation. There's some other options that are worth looking into as well, but now I do have a source cited for my document. Another tool that's worth looking at is Compare Documents. It is possible to select a comparison document and compare the two. Teachers can use that often to look for plagiarism or people kind of copying each other's work in a class. You just select the comparison document, there's a couple of other settings, and then just click Compare. So that's what you need to know to get started using Google Docs effectively. This is just level 1 though. In a future video, we'll go through Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Forms, and Slides at a higher level, level 2. But with what I've shown, you should be able to create new Google Docs, add text, make some basic changes to the text, share your documents, and provide feedback with collaborators. In the next segment, you'll learn how to create Google Sheets, which are similar to Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. In the next segment, we'll look at how to use Google Sheets and how to use Google Sheets to create your own spreadsheets, kind of similar to Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. So let's get started learning how to use Google Sheets. Right now I'm in Google Docs. I'm just going to X out of that document and of this Google Docs tab to get me back into Google Drive. And remember, in Google Drive, all the edits that you make are automatically saved, so I don't need to worry about losing that work. So here on my Google Drive homepage, how would I go about using Google Sheets and creating a Google Sheet file? I would start just by clicking here on New and then going down here and choosing Google Sheets. If I put my mouse here on this arrow, you'll see that there's options for creating a Google Sheet from a template, but there's also the option of simply creating a blank spreadsheet, and that's what I'm going to do. So in that case, I could just click here and it creates a brand new Google Sheet for me. Alternatively, just like I showed for Google Docs, it is possible to just use this Google Apps button. Just click it and browse down the results that pop up and you'll see Sheets. If you click on that, it takes you to a welcome screen for Google Sheets. It's got the templates here and a button for creating a blank spreadsheet. I'm going to click here to get back into the spreadsheet that I created from Google Drive. So if you have experience using Microsoft Excel, what you see here should look familiar. And I'll talk about what I call the anatomy of a spreadsheet or spreadsheet vocabulary in just a minute. But before we get to that, let's look at how to name our spreadsheet and how to share it with other people. So here in the upper left, I can just click where it says Untitled Spreadsheet and I can give it a name. So I've done that. I can tap enter, and that is now the title of this spreadsheet. Now that it's titled, it's easy to share with other people. I can just click here on share, and I get the same options that I get in Google Docs. I can click to type in the names of people that I want to share this spreadsheet with. I could either select their names or type them in. I could also select a group to send it to. The other option, though, is to go down here to where it says restricted and change it to anyone with the link. It's important to notice what permissions people will have. Anyone with the link at this point would be able to view the spreadsheet, but I could change that to be commenter or editor, just like I showed for Google Docs. It's the same process, the same system. Once I've set this up properly, I can click copy link, and then all I need to do is supply that link to the people I want to be able to access this document and work on it in this case, because I've set this up so that they'll have editor permissions. So just provide them that link and they will be able to work on this document along with me. So I'll click done. This spreadsheet is now named and shared. Next, let's look at the anatomy of a spreadsheet. If you're not yet familiar with Microsoft Excel or just the idea of spreadsheets, it's going to be important that you learn certain key terms or vocabulary. The first is columns. You'll notice that most of what you see here in Google Sheets is set up in the form of columns that have letters associated with them. So column B, column F, column J, and also rows. So we have row number 2, row 16, etc. Now, if I use the scroll wheel on my mouse to scroll down the spreadsheet, or if I use this bar here at the right, you can see that the number of rows just continues to grow and grow and grow until I get to 1,000. It is possible to add more beyond 1,000, but by default, we have 1,000 rows. What about columns? If I use this slider, I can move to the right, and you can see by default, I have A to Z columns. But again, it is possible to add more. If I right-click here on column W, notice that there's an option to insert a column to the right. And now, if I browse over to the right, you can see there's a column AA. So we have lots of columns and potentially even more, and we have 1,000 rows, and again, potentially even more. Now, the intersection of columns and rows creates what we call cells. So the intersection of column D and row 4 is cell D4. The intersection of column G and row 10 is right here, and so the name of that cell is G10. So the nice thing about this is I can reference any cell in this spreadsheet. No matter how big the spreadsheet gets, I can always reference an exact point in the spreadsheet. This is cell K13. This is cell D12, etc. Okay, in addition to columns, rows, and cells, we also have something called ranges. So I'm going to highlight a range. I'll click and drag from C3 down to G13. That is a range. It's basically any group of cells that are next to each other. So this example that I've highlighted is H2 through I4. You always start by referencing the upper leftmost cell, and then you say the word through, and then you say the lower rightmost cell. Now in Google Sheets, the way you would note this is you would type the first cell reference, so H2, and then instead of typing the word through, you just use a colon, and then I4. So H2 colon I4 describes this exact range. We also have sheets. So here we have sheet number 1. Basically everything you see here is part of sheet 1. Sometimes people call sheets worksheets or spreadsheets. Those are all basically synonymous. You can add additional sheets by clicking this button here. So now I have 2 sheets, and a collection of more than one sheets together is called a workbook. Okay, in addition to those important spreadsheet vocabulary terms, it's just important to note that in Google Sheets, we have a menu here at the top. You've got the File menu, Edit menu, View, Insert, etc. And when you put your mouse over any of these menus, you'll see a pop-up with all of the options associated with that menu item. We have some formatting tools here, including font formats, text color options, cell options, centering, and all sorts of other tools that you'll use quite often. Underneath these formatting buttons and options, we have the formula bar. That's here. This is where you can type formulas and use functions to help you use Google Sheets. To the left of that, we have the name box. When you click on a cell, the name box will tell you the name of that cell. If you click and drag a range, the name box will show you the name of that range. Same with columns and rows. It is possible to also use the name box to change the name of a cell or range. So for example, if I plan to always put the high score here in this box, I could click over here and change the name to high score. I'll tap enter on the keyboard. As long as there's no spaces in that name, it should allow you to rename that cell. So now this cell is named high score. Over here on the right side of my Google Sheets screen, I have some connections to some of the other Google tools. So here's a button for Google Calendar, Google Keep, Google Tasks, Contacts, and Maps. If I click on any of those, it opens up a panel that lets me get a glimpse of what I have in those other Google tools. And sometimes I can use those other tools also inside of Google Sheets. So for example, if I wanted to, I could click and drag to highlight, copy, and then paste in content from Google Keep. I'm going to undo that. If you want to learn about any of these other Google tools, please watch my videos on those tools. Next, let's look at how to insert some data into this spreadsheet. Right now it's completely blank. So I'll click here on cell A1 and I'll just type something like test scores. I'll tap enter on the keyboard and that text is now inside of cell A1. And now I'm on cell A2. Here I will type some of the categories of information that I'll store in this document. So I'll type the word name. I'll tap the tab key to tab over to the right. I'll type grade, tab over. I'm going to type 2022, I'll tab over and type 2023. Now I'll tap enter on the keyboard and that moves me down to the next row. So I could just begin typing in information about my students and their scores on the National Spanish exam. I can tab over and tap enter to move down. You can also use the arrow keys on the keyboard to move up, down, left, and right within a spreadsheet. Give me a minute to enter some data into this spreadsheet and then I'll resume the video. Now that I have some data on my spreadsheet, let's look at how we can format the cells in Excel to make the information stand out better and make it easier to understand. So first, I would like to center what's in cell A1 over all of the data so that people know that this is the title of this section of the spreadsheet. To do that, all I would need to do is click and drag from cell A1 through cell D1. So that selects a range, and then I'll go up here to the menu and some of the buttons that are here, and you should see a button that looks like this, Merge Cells. When I click that, it merges those cells together, so now instead of 4 different cells, we just have one big cell. With that cell highlighted, I can go over here to this button and change the alignment to center that text in the cell. I'm also going to bold it by clicking this button here. I might increase the font size as well, just so that people know that this data is different than the data below. I might do the same thing with these column titles. So I'll click and drag to highlight all of those titles. Notice that I have multiple cells selected, so a range is selected. And I can go up here and bold the range. Again, I could center it. I might increase the font or change the font color. I might italicize it. There's just lots of options that I have for formatting these cells. In addition to this basic formatting, Google Sheets lets me format data in different ways. For example, if this number here wasn't a test score, but rather some money, I could change how this data is formatted. I could select the cell or the range and then go up here to the menus. I could click this button to change it from automatic formatting to financial formatting or accounting or currency formatting. Now all of these numbers are formatted as money. I'll undo that by clicking this button here to undo. Other types of formatting that we have percentage, we have dates and times, durations, and much more. In some cases though, just leaving the format as automatic is fine. Next, we're going to look at how to sort numbers or text in your spreadsheets. For example, let's say I want to sort this data based on the students' names. All I need to do is click and drag to highlight the range that I want to sort, and then go up here to the Data tab and choose Sort Range. I could sort this range by column A, so the names of the students, in alphabetical order, A to Z, or reverse alphabetical order, Z to A. There are also some advanced options you could look at, but I'll just click alphabetical order. So now all of the data has been reordered based on the alphabetical order of the names. So that's sorting based on text. Let's do a sort based on a number. To do that, I'll click and drag to highlight the range that I want to sort, and I'll go up to the Data tab, sort range by column D, A to Z. Now, even though it says A to Z, with numbers, what that means is lowest number to highest number. So you can see the results. The other option, which might make more sense, is to sort by column D, Z to A. Then you'll get the highest number first. Now, what if I wanted to sort by one of these numbers that's in the middle of the data? How would I do that? Well, I would still click and drag to select a range, but then I would go up to Data, Sort Range, and I would choose Advanced Range Sorting Options. I could sort based on the grades of the students. So column B, I want it to be in alphabetical order. Click Sort. Now all of the data is reordered based on the grade levels of the students. Next, let's look at some of the important functions that you'll need when you start using formulas. We'll look at the most common functions. And let's say that this test costs money. I'm going to go here to column D, right-click, and choose Insert One Column Right, and I'll type in Fee Paid. Tap Enter, and let's say that each of these students have paid at least some of the fee, and I can click and drag to highlight that range and to format it as currency. Now, let's say I want to total up all of the fees paid by these students. I might go down here and type in the word total, tap tab, and then I could put in a formula. In Google Sheets and also in Microsoft Excel, the way you start a formula is by typing the equals sign. So this cell equals, and notice that Google Sheets is trying to guess what I'm going to type next. It thinks I want to sum up all of the fees paid, and that happens to be correct. So I could just tap Enter on the keyboard and my work is done. However, in some cases, Google Sheets will guess incorrectly. So it's important to know how to type in these formulas and use these functions. So this cell equals the sum, and the word sum is our first function. Usually, whenever you type a function, the next thing to do is put in a left parenthesis, and then to type in what it is that you want added up. Now I could, of course, just type 6 plus 4 plus 3 and continue to type in the numbers that I want to add up. But it makes a lot more sense instead to simply click and drag to highlight what it is I want to add up. If there's a lot of numbers that you want to add up, instead of clicking and dragging, you might want to just type in the name of the range that you want added up. In this case, E3 through E7. And then you're supposed to put in a right parenthesis, but in most cases you don't have to, so I'll just leave that off. Tap Enter on the keyboard. There's my total amount. So that's how you use the sum function in Google Sheets. Next, what if I want the average score in 2023? I could just type in average, tab over, and create another formula. This cell equals the average, put in my left parenthesis, and then I just have to ask myself, what is it that I want averaged? And it's this data here, so I'll click and drag to select it, or I could type in the name of the range, tap Enter on the keyboard, there's the average score. If I want the high score, I would use the max function, so this cell is equal to max, left parenthesis, of this range, tap Enter, the high score is 95. What about the low score? For that, I would type equals, and instead of max, I would put in min, left parenthesis, type or click and drag to highlight the range, tap Enter, there's the low score. And there are many other functions and formulas that you can use in Google Sheets. One more that I want you to know about is count. So this cell is equal to count, left parenthesis, and I'll just click and drag to highlight the 2023 scores, tap Enter, and what count does is it just counts how many different scores there are, and that will tell me how many students took the test. Sometimes when you're composing formulas in Google Sheets, instead of just typing them right into a cell, you might want to select a cell and then use the formula bar to compose the function. So this equals the max of the 2022 scores, tap Enter. Sometimes it's just cleaner and easier to enter the formula here on the formula bar. So those are some of the most common functions that you can use in formulas in Microsoft Excel. If you want to learn more, you of course could Google Sheets functions and you would find some good information about those. Or you could go up here to the Insert menu, and here there's a function option. And you'll see here some of the most common functions. Underneath that, you get a list of all functions and categories of functions, database functions, logical functions, operators, and many more. Next, let's look at how to analyze the data in a spreadsheet by using charts. So let's say I want to chart some of this information here in this range. I could select the range and I could go up here to Insert and select Chart. This is going to try to chart all of the data. So we can see blue is the grade of the student, red is how they scored in 2022, yellow in 2023, and we even have a chart of the fee that they've paid. Over here on the right side of the screen, there's a chart editor that we can use to change this chart. I could switch from a column chart to a pie chart. And let's say instead of tracking all of this data in my chart, what if I want to focus just on name and recent test score? I could, if I wanted to, select just those two columns, or another way to do it is to click and drag to select columns B and C, and then right-click and choose Hide Columns. So now those are hidden. And then I could click and drag to just get these two columns of data. Now when I go to Insert, Chart, the resulting charts are going to look a lot more simple and easy to read. Again, if I want to, I could switch to a pie chart or to a combo chart or any of these other options. There are also ways to customize your chart, including the style of the chart, the background color, etc. I'm going to change this chart type to a line chart, which may or may not make sense with the data, but I just want you to see that if you customize your chart, it is possible to add a trend line, which sometimes is very helpful to show the general direction of a trend. With the data that I'm showing in this spreadsheet, it may not make a lot of sense because this is tracking multiple students. But if I was tracking the same student with multiple test scores, the trend line would be very helpful. When I'm done customizing my chart, I can close out of the chart editor. And now, if I wanted to, I could move this chart to the side a little bit just by clicking on the edge of the chart, scoot it over. I could even put it on a different sheet. If I click here on these three dots, there's an option to move to own sheet. Once I've done that, now I have sheet 1 that has the data and chart 1 that has the chart that goes with the data. Notice that if you do that, there's a button here that you can use to publish your chart. You can link to the chart after you've published it. You could also embed the chart. In either case, you would select what you want and then click Publish. Are you sure you want to publish? Yes, I'm sure. I click OK. In this case, I get an embed code that will help me to embed this onto a website or into a learning management system or many other options. With link, of course, you can just copy that link, give it to anyone, they'll be able to see the chart. I'm going to undo moving this chart to its own sheet because I want you to see that you can click on a chart that you create and then copy it. And then back in Google Drive, if I wanted to, I could create a Google Doc and then I could paste in the chart that I got from Google Sheets. And I just used Control V to paste it in. When you do that, you need to decide, do I want to just link to the spreadsheet so that anytime the chart gets updated or the data that the chart's based on is updated, it will update in my document here? Or do I want it to not be linked, basically to just be a snapshot in time? So those are both good options. I'll just leave the default. I'll click Paste. So now I have a chart inside Google Docs, but I created that chart in Google Sheets. Now let's look at what happens when, let's say, Alberta's score comes back corrected. Instead of 92%, she got 28. I tap Enter. The chart updates here. Let's look at Google Docs. When I go to Google Docs, notice that there's an Update button, and I'll click that, and the data updates. So you can do this same kind of thing to add charts to Google Sites, to Google Slides, and to many other types of documents or systems. Jumping back to Google Sheets, let's say I want a teacher's aide that's in my class to help me enter data into the spreadsheet, but maybe I want to make sure that certain key data isn't deleted. It's possible to protect a range of data. Once you have the data selected that you want to protect, you can just go here to the Data menu and choose Protect Sheets and Ranges. I just want to protect the current range right here. I click Set Permissions. I could just show a warning when people are editing that range, or I could restrict who can edit this range. Only I can. Or I could customize that, and I could add maybe several different editors who can edit that range, but nobody else can. In this case, I think I'll just show a warning when editing this range. I'll click Done, Changes Saved. So now if I accidentally delete Alberta's name, notice what happens. I get a pop-up. You're trying to edit this sheet that shouldn't be changed accidentally. Edit anyway. If I say OK, it lets me go ahead and do that. But this is a great option to protect parts of a spreadsheet from accidental change. It's also possible to protect not just a cell or a range, but an entire sheet. So if I want to protect all of sheet 1, I could, or all of sheet 1 except for certain cells, and I can put in the cells that should be editable in this spreadsheet, and then just click Set Permissions. So those are some exciting options to help you keep the data in your spreadsheet safe. So in this segment of the video, I've shown you how to create a Google Sheet, how to share it. We've learned the important components of a spreadsheet, how to format, how to organize, enter data, and much more. In the next segment of the video, we're going to look at how to use one of the most powerful tools that's in Google Drive. It's called Google Forms. So next, we're going to learn about Google Forms. And what are Google Forms? They're forms that you can create and then send out to people. Those people fill out the form, and you are able to see the answers that they put into that form. Here in Google Drive, the way you create a new form is just by clicking on New and then selecting Google Forms. Just like with these other tools, if you put your mouse here on the arrow, you could build a Google form from a template. You could also create a blank quiz, which is a special kind of Google form, or you could just create a blank form. And that's also what happens when you just click here. That's the default, just a blank form. Now that this is loaded, notice that it's giving me some help to learn how to use Google Forms. I'll just click OK, got it to close out of that help. But if you wanted to, you could go through those to learn more. Here in Google Forms, I can click here in the upper left to name the form. Let's say I want to create a form for back to school night for parents to fill out. I could just name it that and then click away from the title, and the title is updated here and also here at the top. Next, I can put in a form description. I'll just type in, "Welcome parents, please fill out this form." Of course, you could type in more details and more guidance if you want to. And notice that I do have some font options here. So I could bold the word please if I want to. I could underline it. I could even link to other websites, other resources. So that's a good option. And there's some other options here as well. Let's move down here to our first question in this Google form. Right now it's untitled. So I'm going to click there and I'll just type in my first question. What's your name? And it looks like by default, this is set to be a short answer question, which is perfect. If I wanted to, I could click here to add an image to this question. I could upload an image. I could take a picture using a camera and have that added. In this case, I'll just click Google Image Search and I could just type in name. Maybe I'll select this option here, click Insert. So now when they see this question, they'll also see this image of a name sticker. I'll just browse down my form a little ways, and this is basically what the parents will see. They'll see a little blank space here for them to type a short answer. If I want to, I could set this question to be required. If a parent's going to fill out this form, they must include their name. Okay, so I've completely finished my first question in this form. My second question is going to be about student names. So that's pretty similar to the first question. So I'm just going to click this button here to duplicate the current question. So now I have two of them, but I could just change this from what's your name to what's your student's name. And maybe I don't need this image twice, so I could click here and click to remove it, and I'm done with my second question. Now, if I don't want to just keep copying the previous question, but rather I want to create a new question from scratch, I can go over here to this panel, and this panel should follow you as you go down and as you go up in Google Forms. But just click there on the plus sign to add a new question, and then you can decide what the question type should be. Multiple choice is pretty common, but notice that there are checkboxes, questions, there's a drop-down list question, a paragraph question, and scales and grids. So some really good options. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well does your student speak Spanish, etc. I'm just going to choose drop-down in this case, and I'll click and ask the question, what grade is your student in? And then I can click to type in the options, 7th grade, add another option 8th, and a third option 9th. I'll just stop there. Again, I could make this a required question, and I could move on to my next question. So I hope you get the idea here. I could continue adding question after question, but let's pretend like I've added all of the questions that I need to and that I want to for this form. What comes next? Well, it's important to notice that in addition to your questions here at the top, there's a button here for responses. So this is where I'll go to read and see the responses of the people that fill out my form. But where is the data actually going to be stored? To find that out, you would click here on this symbol. Right now, by default, it's going to create a new spreadsheet in my Google Sheets called Back to School Night Responses. If I don't want that, I could instead select an existing spreadsheet. So maybe there's one sheet that I use for multiple years and I want it to just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the new data from this new form, maybe I want it to be added to an existing spreadsheet that I've used for several years. I don't think that's necessarily a great idea, but it is possible, and I could just click Select to choose the individual spreadsheet that I want the data sent to. I'm going to cancel out of that and cancel again. In addition to questions and responses, we also have a Settings button. Notice that it is possible to make this a quiz, and if you do that, you should read through these options, the default points, and there's some default settings as well. So check those out if you really do want to make this a quiz and not just a survey or a questionnaire. I'm going to turn off Make This a Quiz just so you can see some of the other options a little easier. You can manage how responses are collected and protected. So do you want to collect the email addresses of the people that fill out the form? You may or may not want to do that. Do you want the people that fill out the form to be able to edit their response after submitting the form? And can the same person submit the form more than once, or do you want to limit it to one response per person? We also have some presentation options that are nice. For example, you could add a progress bar so that the person filling out the form has some sense of how close they're getting to the end of the form. You could also shuffle the question order. This is great for teachers who don't want students easily copying each other's work. You could edit a confirmation message so that when the form is submitted, the person sending the form gets a message saying something like, "Thanks for your time," etc. We have some other options as well that are kind of nice, and you should also look at the defaults to make sure those are the way you want them to be. So now that I've changed the settings to the way I want them to be, I know where the responses are going to go, and I've, of course, added my questions and my title for the form. The next thing I should probably do before sending this form out to people is just think about the way it looks. Am I okay with the look and feel of this Google form? I probably am. I think it looks good. But if I wanted to, I could customize this form to make it look a little fancier, maybe a little nicer. You can do that here at the top with Customize Theme. Here I could change the header font, the font size if I want to. I can change the color of this form. I could also add a header to my form. So I could choose the image. You can see there's all these categories that I could select from. In work and school, there's some great options for teachers and other professionals. But notice you can also upload your own photos or even tap into your Google Photos account to bring in photos from there. I'm just going to select themes and choose this book, click Insert. So now I have a nice header here at the top of my form. Okay, I'm ready to send this form out. So I'm going to X out of this theme panel and I can just click Send. When you click Send, you get a list of options. You could simply email the form directly from Google Forms. So you could put in a person's email address, you could customize the subject if you want to, and the message if you want to, and then click Send. Or if you prefer, you could click here to get a direct link to this Google form. You could even shorten the URL, which is really nice. Just copy that, paste it in a learning management system or on a Google site or other web page. Include it in a newsletter, whatever you want to do, but whoever clicks that link should be able to access your Google form. Now, just so you know, there are times when that's not true. You'll send out the form and people won't be able to access the form because they're not part of your organization. So if that happens, check your settings to make sure that it's set so that people outside of your organization can fill out the form. That's a really common problem that happens when using Google Forms, especially in a school setting and also sometimes in a business setting. Now, there is one other option that we have here listed, which is embedding the form. If you click that button, you get an embed code, you can change some settings, and then embed the form directly onto a web page or into a learning management system. And that way people don't have to leave a website or an LMS to fill out the form. It's just right there in front of them on the page. So that's a great option as well. We also have links to Facebook and Twitter if you want to send the form that way. So we get lots of great options for sending forms. So give me a minute to send this form to somebody, and then we'll look at the response. Okay, so I've sent this form out, and this is what it looks like when the recipient receives the message, at least through email. They can click to fill out the form. It takes them online. Click OK. I think this looks really good. This is where the recipient can fill out their name, what grade is the student in, and student's name. Then they can click Submit, and you can see the options that I selected enable the recipient to edit their response or to see their previous responses or submit another response. Again, you can change those if you want to. I'll X out of this. Now, going back to my Google form, let's say I've sent this out to all of the parents, or maybe I just had a computer available at back to school night. At the end of back to school night, I can just click here on responses. You can see there's one response. I can see a summary of all responses. In this case, there's only the one response, so 100% of them have the same response. But normally you would see a breakdown of the different answers. The other option is to look at individual answers or on a question-by-question basis. So I hope that you'll think about Google Forms and how you could use it in an educational setting or in a business setting or even with family members or neighbors. There are lots of ways you could use this to gather up information to help with planning and organizing. Back here in Google Drive, I just want to go back to Google Forms, put my mouse here to show that you can create a blank quiz in addition to a blank form. So this quiz could ask, what is the color green in Spanish? I could click to put in the correct answer and then some incorrect answers. I think that looks pretty good. And then notice you can click here to put in an answer key. So the correct answer is verde. Click Done. So now this will be marked as correct or incorrect based on the student responses. And those responses will be gathered, collected here in this part of Google Forms. So again, I hope you'll think about Google Forms and the many ways that you could use it. It's a good way to get feedback from a group of people, maybe students at the end of the year, parents at back to school night or parent-teacher conference. You could get feedback from other teachers or members of your team in a business setting. You could collect survey data from the public or any sort of data from a group. And there are many other potential uses of Google Forms. In the next and final segment of this video, we're going to look at Google Slides and how to use it to create online presentations for students, for coworkers. It's great for the boardroom and the classroom. In this final segment, we're going to learn Google Slides, so let's get started. I'm going to X out of all of these other documents here, all of these files that I've worked on and created. Everything is automatically saved in Google Drive, so that's nice. And you can see here in Google Drive each of the files, documents, etc. that I've created recently. Similar to the other Google tools that I've highlighted, when I want to create a Google Slides file, I just go here to the New button and click. And then I can go down here to Google Slides. If I put my mouse on this arrow, it lets me create a slideshow from a template if I want to, or a completely blank presentation. And that's the default if I click here on Google Slides. So I clicked, and now I have a completely blank presentation. I'm starting from scratch to create my presentation. If you've used Microsoft PowerPoint before, what you see here should look pretty familiar, but let's do a quick overview of the layout. What we have here at the top is just a series of menus, and then we have some tools underneath that in button form. So you can click on these buttons to do different things. Over here on the right, I have a panel, at least by default, that lists some different themes that I can apply to my presentation. We'll do that in just a minute. Over here on the left, I have a list of thumbnails, and each of those thumbnails represents a slide in my slideshow. Right now, there's only one thumbnail, there's only one slide. And in addition to the thumbnail, you get the actual slide here at the center. Underneath that slide, we get the ability to add speaker notes if you want to. If you add speaker notes, only the person running the Google Slideshow will see those notes, nobody else, unless you print it and choose to print those notes. In addition to what I've just shown, over here on the right, we have buttons that link to and open up other Google tools. And again, if you want to learn any of these tools, watch my other videos on those topics. So let's say I want to make a presentation on the Spanish transportation vocabulary. So I just type in that title. It's added to my slide. I can also click to add a subtitle. I could put in the author's name there or an actual subtitle. Now that I've created my title slide, I want to go ahead and select a theme for this slideshow. You can browse down to see all of the available themes. It's also possible to import themes, and there are some great resources for you to help with that. For example, there's a website called Slides Carnival that you can open up, and it has hundreds and hundreds of Google Slides themes that you can import directly into your own version of Google Slides. For now, I'm just going to select this option here. That's my new theme. It changed the font, the color scheme, etc. If I ever change my mind, I can do that. I can just click on another theme and try it out. Now that I've got my first slide, my title slide, I'm going to go over here to the left and add a second slide. There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can just right click and choose New Slide. That's a great option. Or you can go up here, click the plus sign to get a new slide. If you click the arrow next to the plus sign, it gives you a variety of different slide types that you could add. And there are some great options to choose from. I'm going to tap Delete or Backspace on the keyboard to delete the slides that I don't need. Okay, now I just need to start adding content to these slides. So this particular slide comes with a text box here for some text and also a text box up here for title. So I just clicked where it says click to add title, and I'll just title this slide Ground Transportation. And then I'll click here to add text. Maybe I'll put in El Auto or El Coche. I tap enter and I could put in la motocicleta, la bicicleta, el tren. Now, as you add text in a text box, if you decide you want bullets, which is pretty common in Google Slides, all you need to do is go up here to the toolbar and look for the bullets options. Now, in this case, they're not fitting on my screen, so they're here in these three dots, and there's bullets. If I close the themes, let's see if that makes it so that more tools can appear on the toolbar. So I'm going to X out of that, and yes, now I can see more tools on the toolbar, but I still don't see bullets. So I'll just click the three dots, click bullets, and whatever I had selected or wherever my flashing insertion point or cursor was placed, that's where a bullet appeared. But I can click and drag to highlight everything and add bullets. So now if I click and then tap enter, automatically another bullet appears. In addition to bullets, we can also add numbering, so that's a great option. But I'm going to stick with bullets. In addition to simple text and titles, we can also add shapes. If you click Insert, Shape, there's some shapes that you can add, and these are also accessible here on the toolbar. I can click there, Shapes. I could put in a triangle, a circle, whatever it might be. If it's a circle, by default it's kind of an oval, but if you hold the Shift key, it will force it to be a perfect circle. Once you've drawn your circle, just release the mouse button, and now you've got a circle or a rectangle or a square or a triangle, whatever it might be. We can also insert lines just by clicking there or going to Insert Line, and then just click and drag and drop, and you've got your line that you can then move. You can also adjust the length and the angle of the line as needed by using these handles at the beginning and end of the line. There are many other things that you can insert into your slides, and I hope you'll check these out and learn how to use them, like diagrams, audio, video, etc. But one more that I want to highlight at this point is word art. If you click on word art, you can type in some text, tap enter, and the text is added as word art. I'm going to undo some of those recent changes just by using Control-Z on the keyboard, or you can also use this arrow here. Just as you would expect, you can adjust the font types and colors. Just select the text that you want to change and go up here to the toolbar, click on Font, and change it to a different font. Even though I have a theme applied, I can break away from that theme, at least at certain points, by selecting parts of the text and changing the fonts manually. Same thing with colors. Just highlight the text that you want to change and then pick a different color. Now this would be the background color, so I need to go over here to the text color, click, and I want to make it dark purple, and that change has been made. It is possible to create links within your Google Slides. So let's say I want this to become a link to a website where they can learn more about trains in Spanish, or maybe I want to link to another slide in my slideshow. just click and drag to highlight the text, and then I can go to Insert and choose Link. And notice there is a shortcut for this that's very handy, but I'll just click Link. I could link to a slide in this presentation, or I could put in the URL for a website, click Apply, and now that's a hyperlink. And during the presentation, it can be clicked, and the viewer will be able to go to the linked slide, or in this case, the linked website. Next, let's look at some other ways that I can change the visual look of my presentation. One of those ways is by changing the background color. Now, it is possible to do that by adding a theme or changing the theme. That will change the background color of my slides and of my presentation overall. But it is also possible just to right-click on a blank part of a particular slide and choose Change Background. So now I could switch the background just of this one slide, let's say to be yellow, click Done, and now it looks very yellow. Some other ways that I could change the visual look of my presentation is by adding images, and this is really important when using Google Slides. Google Slides, just like PowerPoint, really isn't meant to be used for sharing text, maybe a little bit of text, but it's really best for sharing images, charts, graphs, shapes, and yes, even videos, and also some text, but hopefully not too much text. So I can add an image by clicking Insert, Image, and I can upload an image from my computer. Also look at all of these other great options for inserting images. I could use my webcam to take a picture and put that right in. I could add images by URL or through my Google Photos account or Google Drive, but this is one of the very best options, search the web. When I click on that, it opens this panel here, and I can search Google Images. I'll just search for train, and it gives me some great images of trains. I can click to select an image and then click Insert, or I can just double click on an image and it will be added to my slide. At that point, I can resize the image. Now, in some cases, the rectangular nature of these images might actually become a bother to you. In some cases, it's better not to have those rectangular edges. So let's insert another image, search the web, and this time, in addition to typing in train, I'll type in PNG. So now when I do the search, I get results that in many cases don't have rectangular backgrounds. It's not perfect, it's not 100%, but at least some of the results now don't have rectangular backgrounds. Here's one that I found. Does not have a background, and I can resize that as needed and drag it to where I want it to be. In addition to dragging and dropping and resizing images, it's also possible to crop images. So let's say this image here of the train, I want to crop out the left side of the image. I can double click on the image and I get these different handles at each edge. If I click and drag one of those handles, I can crop out part of the picture and then click away from the image, and now the crop has taken place. If I change my mind, just double click again and I can bring it back to the full image. Next, let's look at how to add a video to your Google Slideshow. In some ways, it's pretty similar to inserting images. Just go to the Insert tab, but this time choose Video. By default, it lets you search YouTube for videos. So I'll do a search for motorcycle, and maybe I'll add test drive to the end of that. Here's a video. I can click on it to select it, and then click Select, and now that video is being added to my slideshow. Just like with images, I can resize the video and move it, and I can click to play the video if I want. Notice with videos, you get some format options that are important. For example, video playback. How do I want this video to start playing when the slideshow is being watched? Do I want it to only start when I click or when I advance the slide? Or do I want it to play automatically when the slide comes up? Also, notice you can trim out the beginning of the video and the end of the video if you want. Now, in addition to inserting videos from YouTube, we also have inserting videos by URL. Again, though, that's assuming a YouTube video. The other option is to tap into your Google Drive, and any videos that are on your Google Drive can be selected and inserted into your Google slide. Now, similar to other Google Drive tools like Google Docs, Google Sheets, etc., you can share Google Slideshows. Before you share, it's important that you name the Google Slideshow. So I'm going to click here, and notice by default, it automatically named my slideshow after my title slide, and that's perfect. But if I wanted to change that, I could. Notice that it's being saved in my Google Drive. If I wanted to, I could click here to put it into a specific folder or subfolder in my Google Drive, but I'm happy with the default in this case. So now I could click here to share, and the sharing settings should look pretty familiar to you by now. I can share with specific people. If I do that, I need to make sure that I'm giving them the right permissions, either viewer, commenter, or editor permissions. I can send them a message with this invitation. I'm going to cancel in this case, but the other option is to change it from restricted to anyone with the link. So now anyone with this link that I can copy will be able to view this presentation. That's important if you want to be able to send this presentation out to the world or to a group of students or shareholders, etc. In some cases, though, you might want to change them from viewers to editors or commenters. Now, let's assume that I've done this. Maybe I've shared this with other people who are going to be editors with me on this slideshow. When I click Done and send them the link, they'll be able to start making changes to the slideshow, and they'll be able to see the changes that I've made. So in cases like that, it may be important to use comments. If I click here on Insert, I can add a comment, and the other people that are working on this with me will be able to see my comments. Okay, so there's my comment about the train. I click Comment, and everybody that's co-editing this with me will be able to see that. They'll also be able to click to reply, and if this question has been resolved, they can click here to mark it resolved and remove it. At the beginning of this process of creating this new slideshow, I mentioned that there's a box here at the bottom where I can click to add speaker notes. So I could type a message to myself here saying something like, make sure to talk slowly. So it could be messages like that, or it could be the script for what I'm going to say when I'm actually presenting. In many cases, I don't need a script there, but if you'd like one, you can type out exactly what you're going to say when this slide is visible for the viewers. Okay, let's pretend like I've gone through the process of adding slide after slide. I've added text and images and videos about all of the different forms of transportation in Spanish and how to say them. I'm ready now to present to an audience. I would just click on the first slide and then go up here to Slideshow, and my slideshow begins. Slide number 1. I can advance to slide number 2 in several different ways. I can tap the arrow keys. So the right arrow will advance to the next slide. So will the down arrow. The up arrow goes back to a previous slide, and the back arrow also goes back to a previous slide. A lot of presenters like to use the space bar. If you tap space bar, it goes to the next slide. So that's an option. You can also use these buttons here. And then also, most serious presenters end up getting a presenter remote. These are great. You can just hold them in your hand and click a button to advance the slide. Many of them come with laser pointers that you can point at the screen to point out different parts of a slide. So if you want to buy a presenter remote, look in the description below this video for some recommendations on some really good presenter remotes that are available. When I'm done presenting this presentation, I can just tap the escape key on the keyboard, and my presentation ends, and I'm back in editing mode for my presentation. So in this segment of the video, I've shown you how to get started creating a Google slideshow, but also editing it, changing the theme, adding videos, images, text, shapes, links, and more. We've talked about how to share your slides and how to actually show your presentation. So in this video, I have covered everything you need to know about Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms, and Google Slides. These are the core tools that any Google Drive user needs to know about. And you have learned all of the basics and more that you need to get started using these applications. Now, this is just level 1. In the future, I would love to create a level 2 version of this video, where we take each of these tools to a whole nother level and we look at intermediate and advanced tools, skills, and techniques. So watch for that video in the future. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope you found this video to be helpful. If you did, please like, follow, and subscribe. And when you do, click the bell and you'll be notified whenever I post another video. If you'd like to support my channel, you can do that by clicking the thanks button below the video, or you can support me through my Patreon account or by buying channel merch, and you'll see information about those options in the description below the video.